All of life is like a cup of morning coffee. Everything seems familiar, warm, flavorful, until you take the first sip and realize that someone has put shit in it. Emma woke up in her house, as usual, at 7 in the morning. Her bones were crunchy from age, but her soul was still alive. The coffee maker grumbled like an old dog, and the familiar smell of strong coffee spread through the kitchen. George, her husband for the past 32 years, was sitting on the terrace, flipping through a newspaper and sipping tea. Everything was as usual. An ordinary day. She had no idea that this morning would be the start of a downward spiral. The house stood on a hill in New York State, one of those that seemed like a luxury back in the 90s. She chose the site herself. She remembers planting the first roses, painting the fence while George was in the garage fixing his scooter and drinking beer with a neighbor. Emma built not just a house, she built a life. Stone by stone. The doorbell rang. The postman, young and cheerful, handed her an envelope from a notary's office. "We need your signature on an updated power of attorney." "Standard procedure," she said. Emma sat down in the kitchen with the documents, opened them, and froze. She wasn't a lawyer, but even she could see that her name had disappeared from all the boxes. Not on the list of homeowners, not on the bills, not on the mortgage. And there was another name, Roxy Wilson. She read it 3 times, and her eyes began to twitch, and her palms sweated. A cold wave ran down her back. A thought pulsed through her mind. Who the fuck is Roxy? She didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was a mistake, but maybe it was just some kind of technical bullshit. But her heart already knew it was no accident. She went out onto the terrace, clutching the papers to her chest. George looked up slowly and took another sip of tea. "George, what is it?" He took a quick glance at the documents. He flinched slightly, but he composed himself like an actor in a cheap TV show. It's nothing serious. They just transferred part of the property to an investor to reduce taxes. I'm not an investor. Emma, you don't understand how this works. I control everything. And Roxy Wilson, who's that? Silence. Sharp as a tack. She's a hand of will. An accountant. She handles our accounts. Ours. Mine. That word, mine, hit harder than any scandal. Scream. She didn't shake. Instead, something deeper awoke in her, something stone cold. She turned around and went into her room. She closed the door. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked out the window. Trees were swaying, birds were flying, and the whole world seemed to have no idea that one woman had just lost the ground beneath her feet. And I, a fool, was taking him medicine. I washed his underwear, and I cooked his diet lunches when he said he had high blood pressure. And meanwhile he was signing our house over to some and bitch from the office. She was still silent that evening. George didn't either. They ate chicken casserole in silence that was louder than the cutlery. But Emma had already deciding tomorrow she would find out everything. Who is this Roxy? Why did he put everything on her? And most importantly, how many more lies could this house built on her love hold? Before going to bed, she looked in the shared file drawer and found there a photo. A young woman in a swimsuit. In the background was their swimming pool, and next to her holding her by the waist, George, smiling carefree and an evil glint in his eye. Emma clenched her fists. This wasn't just a good morning. Love could lie. People could lie. But papers can't fake emotions. They just put the truth on the table. Cold, blunt, and straightforward. The next morning, Emma didn't make breakfast. She didn't make oatmeal, poured coffee, or put napkins on the table. George wandered stupidly around the kitchen, waiting for his usual portion of care to fall from the sky. "Do you have any coffee?" he asked, as if innocently. In the store," she said without even looking. Silence. This time not tense but dead. After George left for business, Emma now put all his words in quotation marks. She pulled out her laptop. She went to the real estate registry. She never needed to go there, she trusted her husband. But this time, her faith was dead. The louse. even the old dacha in the mountains they bought after their 20th anniversary. And everything was in the name of J. Thompson in R. Wilson. Not Thompson, as it used to be. Now it's Roxy fucking Wilson. Google is powerful. In 10 minutes, Emma knew more about Roxy than she ever wanted to. 35 years old, a blonde, former fitness model, now an assistant at a local accounting firm. Divorced, no children, but with photos on beaches with legs longer than Emma's list of sins. One of the photos shows a familiar shirt. George's. She knew it inside out because she had washed it 100 times. Emma closed the laptop so hard that the wind rose. She wanted not to cry, but to take the bottle of cognac she had been saving since '98 for a special occasion and down it in one go. But that was not the point. She didn't want to drown herself. She wanted to find out how deeply he had sold her. She dressed strictly. The dress she was saving for the funeral. She went to the same notary who sent the letter. Mrs. Thompson, do you have any more questions? Yes, I do. Tell me how my husband managed to cut me out of everything I've built for 30 years. And when exactly did this happen? The notary, a young man who would have been better suited to the role of a waiter, coughed nervously. He reached into the folders. The first changes were made 2 years ago. Then it was gradual. A year ago, you finally stopped being a co-owner. So I didn't have to sign. You gave power of attorney to Mr. Thompson 3 years ago. But Emma, he was acting legally. Emma remembered. The same trip to the hospital. Then George pleading. Just in case, Emma, something happens to me. And like a fool, she signed it. Her heart clenched. Not with anger, but with shame. Bluna, she had handed him the keys to her life. And he took it and threw everything away. She got back into the car, she started it up. But before she drove off, she called George. You knew I was going there, didn't you? Emma, don't start. I just want to know one thing. Is she worth your throwing away everything? George was silent for a moment. Then he muttered, It's not quite what you think. What do I think? That I love her. Yeah, then it is. And she hung up the phone. It wasn't just a shock anymore. It was a moment of awakening. Emma realized that George was no longer her husband. Maybe he never was. And she was no longer a victim. She is a woman who has been betrayed. But she can still stand up. She returned home. She didn't stop in the kitchen. She went to the bedroom. She opened another drawer, and I took out an old cardboard box labeled personal. There were papers in it from when George was in debt, and one contract she had once signed as a guarantor. She was holding a potential ticket to hell, or the end of it, and she didn't know which way she would choose. Sometimes you look at a person and see everything: their smile, their manicure, even the price of a dress. But the real thing is what you can't see. Sometimes it's what will break you. Emma sat on a couch with a glass of wine for the first time in years. The TV was mumbling some meaningless program, but she wasn't listening. Her thoughts were with Roxy, the one who had come into her life without knocking, without an invitation, and she took away the most valuable thing, not George, but everything that came after. But the worst part was that she was too beautiful, too confident, and too familiar. Emma had seen them when she was young, but Roxy wasn't stupid, and that was what scared her the most. The next morning, Emma put on her makeup, put on her best jacket, and drove to the firm where Roxy worked. Excuse me, I'm looking for Roxy Wilson. They say she does financial planning here. She asked the girl at the reception desk in a sweet tone. But if you want a consultation, do you have an appointment? I'm her mom. Emma lied without any shame. She forgot her paperwork. I'll wait. While she was waiting, she saw a familiar figure in a bright raincoat entering the office next door. Emma got out and followed her. She didn't take her eyes off him. And she couldn't believe her ears when she saw the sign. Special Purpose Legal Agency. It wasn't the first time Roxy had been there. The office was not an accounting office. It was a center for resolving private disputes, the kind of marital disputes, financial where the truth is not sought but sold, When Roxy left, Emma was standing under a tree, just like in a cheap detective story. Roxy stopped, her eyes narrowed. "You must be Emma, and you must be better than you look." Roxy didn't flinch. On the contrary, she smiled. "It's not my fault that George doesn't love you anymore. But it is your fault for not playing fair." "You know," Roxy said. "I'm not just a lover. I'm an investment. He made a bet on me because I'm smart determined, and I don't waste time feeling sorry for myself." "And you signed over all his property?" Emma said sharply. I just suggested what was best." Emma felt the blood rush to her head. She wanted to hit him, but she held back. Instead, she said, "If you think you've won, it's too early to celebrate. He had done this once before, with another woman. Then he came back with me again, and he will do it again. You're only temporary to him." Roxy was confused for a moment. For the first time, and then something happened that Emma hadn't expected. Roxy sat down on the bench. She looked off into the distance. "You know, I was a wife too. Once, at 32, he left me for a student. I was left with nothing. Now I'm that student. And you think this is a victory?" No, it's revenge." Emma didn't answer. She felt strange. No, not sorry. But some kind of understanding, and they'd both been cut by the same blade, just in different years. "Are you coming to the closing on Friday?" Roxy asked. "What closing?" "George wants to buy another property. He says it's for our future child. But if you have something to say, you'd better say it now." Emma left in silence. But her mind was racing. A baby. What else was George hiding, and why was she still silent instead of ruining everything for them? She went into the house. She opened that box of papers. And finally, she pulled out something she had been saving for 30 years, an insurance policy in George's name. And underneath, it was one piece of paper that he didn't remember. One signature that could change everything. Sometimes silence is not peace. It's handcuffs, especially when someone is holding you by the throat and you're smiling to keep from crying. Emma spread the papers on the kitchen table. The old box she had been keeping for years was like a tomb of the past, and in it were a few documents that George had ignored when he was still, well, not quite a creature. There was an insurance policy in his name, an old trust agreement stating that in the event of a divorce, all real estate would go to Emma. Something like the prenuptial agreement he signed before buying his first house. Back then, they still believed in forever together. But the most interesting thing is a short handwritten letter from his old friend, a lawyer, in which he recommended that George not play around with the property records because, he said, everything will turn sideways. And a signature. Alive, with a wet seal. Such a document is like a bomb in court. The phone rang late at night. Emma had already packed her things to go to her former lawyer's office, but something was holding her back. "Avika, have you changed your mind yet?" Roxy said calmly, even sweetly. "About what? Not ruining his life. Hasn't he ruined mine?" Roxy exhaled. Then she spoke slowly. "Listen, George doesn't know I talked to you. But I'm going to tell you straight up. If you pick up that policy or pull out those old documents, he won't just lose the house. We'll go all in. We have the receipts you signed for the renovation loans. You're blackmailing me, and, I suggest you. Keep quiet and leave everything as it is. You get your cut, and you disappear." Emma sat down, her hands shaking. There were indeed loans. She'd signed them without reading them, because she trusted them. And now it was a stab in the back. She couldn't tell George, because now it was clear they were a team. And if it goes to war, there will be war on both sides. At night, she lay awake. She went over everything in her head. She remembered the first years of their marriage, how they painted the walls of their bedrooms together, how she cried with happiness when he brought her the first payment for the joint mortgage. And now he was probably sleeping in the same bed with someone else. And behind every step of her past was Roxy, smiling, smart, and very careful. In the morning, Emma didn't go to the lawyer's office as planned. She went to see her friend Nancy. the same one who got divorced 5 years ago and gnawed away at every square foot of her property. Nancy met her on the porch in her pajamas with coffee. You look like someone who has a lover but is sleeping with the enemy. I look like a woman who has been dumped and is now being blackmailed. We'll decide now." Nancy listened, without interruption. Then she handed her a piece of paper. "Go to my lawyer, not your old one. I want you to see a new one. This one works differently. Hard, no sentiment. But, LA, if you bend now, you'll be living in a basement and eating canned food in a year." Emma nodded. A little of her fear was gone. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she had a chance. It opened in the evening. She opened her phone and saw a message from Roxy. It was just one sentence. "Your silence is your safety. Check your mail tomorrow." And in the morning there was an envelope on her doorstep. No name, no signature. Just a sheet with a copy of the loan agreement where she was named as the person responsible for a debt of more than $300,000. And it added, "This is just the beginning. Keep quiet or you will lose everything." They were all she had to hold on to. But when a family war breaks out, children become not the rear but another front. Lucas, the eldest son, is 32 years old. He lives in Chicago, works in the financial sector, rarely calls, but always seemed to be on her side. But lately, the conversations have become shorter, drier, and something in his voice was disturbing. Emma decided to write herself. "I know no long introductions, Lucas. I know things have been difficult between us. But I wanted to tell you something about the situation with my father. The answer did not come immediately. It took 2 days. It was laconic. "Mom, I'd rather not interfere. You are adults. You can figure it out on your own. I'm tired of being between you." And that was it. No "how are you?" No "hold on." Just indifference, which she did not deserve. Sophie, the younger one, 28, lives nearby. They used to spend whole Saturdays together, coffee shops, shopping, TV shows. Now there is silence, deaf as a concrete wall. Emma called first. "Hi, honey." Oh, Mom, I can't talk right now. I'm in a meeting. Have you seen Dad?" Pause. "A long one. He's sometime here, with Roxy." Emma felt a weight drop in her chest. "And, Mom, I don't want to choose. I hurt for everyone." But Roxy, she's nice. I'm not saying she's a replacement for you, but can I be friends with everyone? It wasn't just painful. It was humiliating. She had given everything to her children, years, nerves, even her own career dream, because someone had to stay home when they were sick, rushed to join clubs, broke their hearts, and came back to her in tears. And now, they don't choose her. They choose neutrality. And neutrality means supporting someone who has betrayed you. She invited Sophie for coffee, without hope, but with need. Her daughter came, smiling, neatly made up. She looked like everything was going well in her life. But Emma had a storm under her eyes and an internal cry. "Mom, I love you. But you know people change. Maybe Dad was really unhappy. Are you serious now? Or it's just, he has the right to a new beginning too." Emma gritted her teeth. Her chest was churning with anger, and the answer she hadn't said was on the tip of her tongue. "And you're going to give him a new start at my expense." The next week she learned that Lucas had bought his father a house. Not just helped, he bought it, and as it turned out, it was in Roxy's name. And it was as if the house that once belonged to her had simply been transferred to another reality. Her son financed the betrayal, and he didn't say a word. That night she paced the kitchen back and forth. She wanted to throw the photos off the shelf, to tear up the children's drawings she had kept for decades. But she couldn't. She was not angry with the children. She was angry with herself, because she had made them too soft. They don't see everything you've been through," Nancy said when Emma came to her in the middle of the night, sitting silently on the couch. "That's why they hurt. But listen to me. If you let yourself be erased, they won't even remember what you smelled like. You'll just be a sad story in a conversation with a psychologist. I don't want to fight them. You don't have to. Just learn to live without their support. They are not a bulletproof vest. They are people, and people fail. The next day, Sophie sent her a photo, a selfie from a party. George and Roxy are in the background. They're smiling. The caption, "Finally all together. A day just like old times." And this, altogether, no longer included her. Sometimes the biggest blows don't come from the future, but from what you thought was long in the past. She went through the old boxes in the basement again, looking for something specific, she didn't even know what. Maybe answers. Maybe a piece of herself that had been lost somewhere between the birth of her children and sleepless nights. There, between yellowed photos and clippings from school newspapers, she found letters, packed in an envelope with an inscription, "Never open. George, only you." And of course she opened them. Who wouldn't? The first letter was dated a few months before their wedding. George was writing to another woman, Linda. He called her my true muse, the woman I couldn't choose. The second letter was from when Emma was pregnant with Lucas. George wrote to her, "I have made a choice, but I don't know if I can live with it for the rest of my life. You are my inspiration and Emma is my duty." She stopped at the word duty. It was worse than a betrayal. It was like a blow to everything she believed in. She thought they had created something together, and all his life. He was just playing a role. She dialed him up, and she didn't know what to expect. Maybe tears, maybe a confession. "George, I found your letters." To Linda. There was silence on the other end. Then a short warning. "I asked you not to open them. And you asked me to marry you. So what? You wouldn't understand. It was a long time ago. And I'm a long time ago. I've been doing this for you for a long time. Duty. Emma, no. Stop it. Now I understand why Roxy. She's the desire. And I'm the responsibility. I'm sorry I've been dragging you down with my duty for so long." She came to her friend's house unannounced. She just showed up, holding those letters in her hands as evidence in the court of life. Nancy read them in silence. Then she asked me one question. "Would you have wanted to know this 25 years ago?" Emma was silent. "You had these years, these children, these mornings with coffee and evenings with a tired 'how are you?' If you had known then, would you have changed anything? Probably. I wouldn't have lived in an illusion, but I would have lived without them, without children, without the life I had, even if it was imperfect. Sometimes the truth is a poison that does not heal, but simply spoils everything that was good." A few days later, Linda showed up. Yes, the one from the letters. In the yard, among the puny bushes that Emma had planted herself 10 years ago, stood a slender woman with a sly smile. "You must be Emma. I'm Linda. We've both lost something." "What are you looking for?" "The past. I want to say goodbye. To him. And to you because he still loves me. But I leave him to you. I don't want him anymore. Then we're both free." It was a strange peace. Like after a storm, when you can still smell the storm, but it's quiet. She sat down in the kitchen and made herself a cup of coffee, and she didn't cry. For the first time in a month, she didn't cry. Because she realized that she was not a victim. She was the foundation, and George was just an inhabitant of her fortress who one day wanted another city. That evening she opened the old laptop, and she came across one more thing. George's correspondence with his lawyer. It was dated 2 years ago. Subject, registration of business and property to another person. Discreet. And the name a gang Roxy. The past was bitter, but the future is even more poisonous. How long can a person pretend that everything is fine? And when does the moment come when you are no longer afraid to lose because you have lost everything? Emma was sitting on the balcony. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. Tusai had a laptop on her lap and a blank space in her head. In front of her is George's correspondence with his lawyer. Everything is clear. Re-registration of the house, accounts, even the family's lakefront property. And on Roxy, the one who showed up 8 years ago as an office designer. The one who is now in charge of her old age. Her roof, her future. You knew I would find it. She whispered into the darkness, but the silence did not answer. It never answers. The next morning she came to the office. Without warning. No lipstick on her lips. In a simple coat, with an envelope in her hand. Roxy was just leaving George's office, pouring something in his ear. When she saw Emma, she stopped like a snake that had suddenly lost its bearings. "Oh, Mrs. Harrison. I didn't expect it. That one day I would look at you with disgust. Shut up. If you want to talk, talk to a lawyer. I'm not your friend. I'm not the woman whose life you ruined. I am the one who picks up the pieces. And unlike both of you, I haven't lied for 20 years straight." George came out, wearing the shirt she'd given him for their anniversary, and symbolic, and funny and painful. You knew Emma. You knew it was cracking. A cracking doesn't mean cheating. It cracks because life does, and betrayal is a choice. She threw the envelope on the table and walked out. She didn't cry. She didn't look back. For the first time in a long time, she walked out like a queen, even if it was with a broken heart. Her son Lucas arrived 2 days later, with his pregnant wife. Emma was waiting in the doorway in her usual state of sesame-pathy. "Mom, we know. Dad called us. We're sorry." She wanted to say that she was not sorry, that she was strong, but it came out of her mouthing, "Aren't you angry with me?" Ana Lucas hugged her tightly, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was not alone. "We can see everything. You're the woman who saved everyone. Now it's your turn to save yourself." At the meeting with the lawyer, everything looked like a game of chess. But Emma was no longer a pawn. She laid out the evidencing correspondence, financial documents, security footage from the house where Roxy had been hanging out in her underwear while Emma was in the hospital with a fracture. "Emma Law, you have every chance of getting some of it back, maybe even more," the lawyer said. "But you're going to have to fight." "I don't want just a part," she replied. "I want Roxy to keep her nose, a coup, and I want George to have his shame. And I want him to say, for once in his life, you were in charge." She made an appointment to meet George, in the same cafe where he had once asked for her hand in marriage. She played on sentimentality. She knew he would come. He always reached for memories like an alcoholic reaches for booze. "And I realized that you don't hurt me anymore. You're just over." Is that an ultimatum? It's a chance. 1. Throw her a take it all back. Throw her out of our papers, and I won't go to war. Otherwise, you'll live in court in shame and alone in your old age. Believe me, I can make your name synonymous with bastard. I'll think about it. You have a week. Then you surrender, but it's yours. 3 days later, she received a text message from an unknown number. "Your husband is not who he says he is. Look what his safe hides. The code is your wedding date." And that was it. Nothing more, but it's enough. Sometimes the worst thing is not the betrayal. The worst thing is to find out that your whole life has been someone's well-thought-out show. And you're just an extra. But when Emma read the text message, she smiled. Not because it made her feel better, but because there was a coldness inside. Calm, precise, like a blade. She knew where the safe was. She knew the code, June 18th, the day she said yes. She opened it, and what she saw was beyond her comprehension. A flash drive, letters, old documents, and photos, lots of them. But not of their children, not of family holidays, but of women. Younger ones, in candid poses, and among them is Roxy. It from when she was barely in her 20s. It turned out that George wasn't just having an affair in his old age. He was building a new life for himself while Emma was still undergoing chemotherapy. And not just one. Not just Roxy. And he was systematically looking for the young and promising. And he rewarded them for their silencing money, watches, contracts through the company. He was not just a trader. He was a hunter. With the mask of a caring husband. Emma called George again. But this time, not in a cafe. To the house where they once raised their children. Where the living room still smelled like her candles and photos from the past hung on the walls. "Sit down. Be quiet. Listen." And she turned on her laptop. On the screen, photos saved from a flash drive flashed one after another. Letters with signatures. Receipts. George was silent at first. Then he sat down. "You have no idea how ashamed I am, no?" "Oh, I do. And I'm enjoying this spectacle. But I wonder if these tears are because of me or because you were exposed. I was wrong. I was weak. But Roxy is different. She gave me." "What?" "An erection." Emma laughs, but her eyes are ice. I gave you 30 years. 2 kids. Vera, she has silicone lips and 3 yoga sessions. I'm tired of being old. And me, I'm not tired of being the diagnosed woman who took care of you when you had panic attacks. Don't compare. You or I was wrong. No, you weren't land. And you built it. Behind my back money, with my blood. And now the game is over." Emma posted some of the material on her blog, anonymously, but with clear hints, or as she called it, the diary of a broken marriage. The articles went viral. People wrote and shared their pain. But most importantly, investors began to avoid their business. George asked me to clean it up. He promised to make amends. He even begged. "You had one last chance. Now it's surrender, but it's yours. A public one." When Roxy found out about the blog, she didn't keep quiet. She showed up at Emma's office, in an expensive coat. "You think you won." No. I didn't win anything. I'm getting what's mine back. A George will come back to me. Maybe. But not with my money, not with my house, and not with my name. I'm going to sue you. For defamation. Great. I'll see you there. Oneo and bring a new pair of underwear. Because this story is going to strip you both naked. The hardest part was with the children. They didn't talk for a long time. But at some point, Lucas called, "Mom, my sister and I saw everything. We're on your side." Always. "I was afraid I'd lost you. You lost your husband, but you found yourself. And we were always with you. We just didn't know how to help." That evening, when all the news was silent and the air was calm, there was a knock at the door. Emma opened the door and saw her old friend standing on the threshold, the one who disappeared 15 years ago. She was holding a suitcase. "We need to talk. There's something you don't know about George and about the years you were in the hospital, and they expected her to scream, break things, smash dishes, and she just disappeared for 3 days. No calls, no words. Because real revenge is when you are not heard, but everyone is afraid of what you will do next." The friend standing with the suitcase on the doorstep was Vanessa. They used to be like sisters, but something happened and she just disappeared like the wind. And now here she is, holding an old suitcase and whispering. "He did the same to me. Only I couldn't stand it then. I ran away. I was silent. And now I'm ready to talk." Then they sat in silence for almost an hour. Then Vanessa took out the photos. Receipts, old letters. It turned out that George had been cheating on women for years. And not just cheating, but manipulating. He set them up. He promised a wedding, gave them the keys to the apartment, and then disappeared, leaving them with debts and broken lives. "Did you know about me?" Emma asked. "I thought I was the only one. Now I realize we were all one." Emma no longer responded to George's messages. She did not appear in court. She sent a lawyer. She didn't write anything on her blog. She simply disappeared from the public eye, and this was driving George crazy. Because the worst thing is not the scandal. The worst thing is when you are silenced, when you don't know what's around the corner, when you have no control over anything. He wrote her letters. He sent her roses. He stood outside the house with coffee in a thermos just like before. But she didn't come out. Meanwhile, Roxy started to get nervous. Financial checks began, audits, the tax authorities. Several contracts were canceled. It turned out that several of the investors were women who also knew George, in a different way than business. And they all came together. 3 weeks later, Emma showed up at a dinner at the club where she and George used to celebrate their anniversaries. She wore a simple black dress, no jewelry, but she looked so beautiful that the whole room turned around. She approached the table where his colleagues were sitting. "I'm sorry to interrupt, I just wanted to tell you that I haven't disappeared. I'm just silently watching everything fall apart. And do you know what? This is my best series. And she left. The same night, George received an email, anonymous, with details of all the financial fraud he had conducted through offshore companies, and another to the tax office, and another to 2 prosecutors. Someone did their homework. Was it you? He asked Emma on the phone. No, it's your past, George. Just decided it was time. Emma and Vanessa became a duo. They didn't cry on each other's shoulders, no. They started a foundation together for women who have lost everything because of toxic relationships. They called it Silence is Not Gold. And every month they added stories, anonymously, but each one with details that are familiar to those who have been part of George's game. Emma sold her house. She moved to a smaller, cozy house near the ocean. In the morning, she drank coffee while listening to the seagulls. Sometimes she cried, but not from pain, from relief. Finally, she didn't have to wear the mask of a happy wife. One evening, Roxy appeared on her porch. No makeup. She was wearing an old sweater. Can I talk to you? Oh, I don't know if we have anything to talk about, Emma answered calmly. And I don't know if he really wants this baby, or if it's just another one of his games. I'm afraid. Then don't drink the tea. Listen, Emma said and walked away, leaving the door ajar. Because sometimes revenge is not a scream, a war, a fight in court. Revenge is silence. It is silence that tears you apart and leaves you alone with yourself. The everything is over. But it didn't make anyone feel better. The court put an end to it. The property was divided. The pages were turned. But there was still an aftertaste in the air. What if it wasn't over? And the trial lasted a little over an hour. George did not appear. He was represented by a nervous young lawyer. Emma was calm in a light suit, as if she had come to a reunion. The judge mumbled a decision. Part of the real estate was left to her. The accounts were frozen, and the company was placed under external management. All the documents were signed. Everything. Period. Anna Vanessa was waiting for her at the exit, with coffee in hand and new news. He's gone. To Portugal, they say. He changed his name. There are rumors that he's opened a wine bar. A great. He'll have something to wash his conscience with, Emma shrugged. And Roxy. Silence. Like I said, silence heals, or destroys. Depends on who's listening. Emma's daughter Laura wrote her a letter. A real one on paper. There were few words, but she read one sentence several times. I am proud of you, and I'm afraid of becoming like him. But now I know what I want to be. This took more tears from Emma than all the betrayals combined, because it was something she had kept silent fought for, and never gave up on. She didn't go to Bali. She didn't get a young lover. She did not start a new life with pathos. She just started living. For the first time for her own sake. She opened a small beach cafe on the outskirts of the city. There were books, candles, silence, and cinnamon coffee. There was a piano in the corner, and on Saturdays, a girl from the conservatory would play something tender. Sometimes Roxy would come in. She didn't say anything. She would just sit in the corner, drink tea, and leave. And that was enough. And Emma had a few letters in her locker. One was to George. She didn't send it. She didn't want him to think that he still had any power over thoughts. One was to her younger self, about how not to be silent. How not to be afraid. But she didn't send it either, because she knew that time she wouldn't have heard it anyway. And one was to a woman who had not yet appeared, who will one day be sitting in that same coffee shop and feel broken. She will put the letter in an old book for her to find by accident. You are not broken. You stop to breathe, to remember how it feels to be yourself. Revenge is not always about action. Sometimes it is silence. Sometimes it's tea without sugar, because you've had enough of sweets. Sometimes it's a dawn that you meet alone, but not alone. Take your time. Just keep walking. Every day is another chance, and life is just beginning. In the evening, the phone rang. The number was unknown. She almost never answered it anymore. But something made her press answer. Emma, The voice was male. Unsure. Lost. Yes, it's me. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything, George. I just wanted to hear your voice. You've heard it before. You don't need to hear it again. And she pressed end. And for the first time, her hands didn't shake. The next morning, she went to the park where she used to swing Lara. The playground was different, but one swing was still there. She sat down. It was slightly cool. The sun had just risen. Well, Emma, you're on your own from here. Not Anne, she smiled, not broadly, but genuinely. As she walked home, a boy ran past her, blonde hair, a familiar profile. Behind him was a young woman, also familiar. Roxy. The boy turned around. Mom, who is this aunt? And Roxy spoking, she's just a strong woman. And Emma nodded, because sometimes the best revenge is to be happy, and to move on, without making a fuss.